Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with 15 healthy and sane major composers. Just a list of names. I'm doing this because in fabulous concert programs, I've been doing my Alan Pedersen Symphony Cycle. And if ever there was a composer who was not healthy and arguably not always sane, it was Pedersen. My goodness, that music is gut-wrenching and difficult and gnarly and nasty, and every so often you kind of need a break. And there are composers we listen to because they just make us feel good, because when you hear them, you know that all is right with the world, that the universe is an ordered place full of logic and beauty, and it exists just for itself. You know what I mean? Maybe not. I don't know. You can tell me what healthy and sane means when you give me your list of healthy and sane composers. But here it is. These are the people I turn to when I just need to feel better. And their music is just a tonic for whatever ails you. We start with, of course, J.S. Bach. Now, of course, I got all kinds of crap from many people because I did a video called My Bach Problem, because I don't like a lot of Bach. That's me. But I recognize it for what it is. And Bach was the ultimate in musical sanity, because everything he just logicalized, whatever you want to say, rationalized the entire universe of music as he knew it. And he gets all the more credit because he did it in the service of a religious orthodoxy which was absolutely pathologically awful. I mean, if you look at the texts of those cantatas and things, oh my God, I'm not going to get into the psychological implications of hardcore Lutheranism. Let me just say that in my previous life as a historian, I did a lot of Reformation history, and it really wasn't a very healthy thing. A lot of what was going on there with Luther and Calvin, sorry folks, but there it was, all about sin and misery and hell and But there was Bach to make something absolutely glorious out of it, and you can't get enough credit for that, quite frankly. So after Bach, someone who just sounds just like him, Poulenc, of course. Poulenc is such a feel-good guy. Now, this doesn't mean that these composers couldn't write music of great tragedy and emotional depth. I mean, anybody who's seen the last scene of Dialogues of the Carmelites know that Poulenc could really wring out a tearjerker when he wanted to at his songs. I mean, there's deeply affecting music, of course, and Poulenc's sacred music too. But by and large, you listen to Poulenc, and oh my goodness, all of your cares just drop away. They'd flow away. You feel purged after you listen to Poulenc. Really, it's just delicious music. And then Martinu. Martinu was a guy who came out straight out and said, in connection with his Second Symphony, I see no means for using music to adopting the technical apparatus of torture. What we need are ordered thoughts, calmly expressed. Oh, I love that man. I really do. And that is what he did. And again, it's not like he didn't write his gut-wrenchers. There's the Concerto for Two-String Orchestras, Piano and Timpani, the Fifth String Quartet, a lot of his slow movements, which are highly chromatic and anguished. There's tons of music he wrote. There's his dreamy, spacey stuff like Giulietta and the Parables and his late orchestral works. I mean, there's a world of music out there. But on the whole, his thoughts are luminous and logical and calmly expressed and beautiful. And oh my goodness, he's a good guy to listen to if you're feeling a little bit down. He really is. He'll pick up your spirits. And then, of course, Saint-Saens, the guy who said there has to be room. That was someone else. He said anybody who doesn't find beauty in a sequence of simple chords perfect only in their arrangement and relationship to each other, understands nothing about music. And he was right. A lot of his music consists of that. I mean, it's music of great polish and beauty for its own sake, and a joy in simply arranging gorgeous ideas in the most perfect way. I mean, I don't need to go through the list of fun things that he did, but yeah, I mean, there's a guy who really knew who he was and what he wanted to do and how to do it. And history has never forgiven him for that, that's for sure. Tovey called him the greatest composer who was not a genius, which was such a nasty sideswipe. But then again, Tovey always had problems with French composers because he was overly enamored of the standard classics, actually. But there we go. So Saint-Saens, and then Stravinsky. Stravinsky, of course, expressed no human feeling whatsoever. Just ask him. That's what he would tell you. His music just was what it was. It existed to be what it is. And some people, again, don't quite understand that aspect of it. They want to hear music that's like deeply expressive. Well, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just want to hear something that's like a nice tart sorbet, cool, bracing, and just a tonic, again, like I said, for what ails you. Stravinsky is very, very good for that. Even his later atonal stuff, the late sacred works, which are creepy and difficult and they're a lot of fun. They can be. And they distance you. They distance you from feeling too much. And I think that's actually a very worthy thing, quite frankly. A lot of his neoclassical music, it just has this cool beauty and logic and wit. I mean, he had a great sense of humor, and his music is often quite funny. And yes, Stravinsky is one of those people, for sure. Now, some of it could be dry as dust. I mean, that's true. It happens. But, that's the minimum. That's rare. And, everybody had their off days. So after Stravinsky, Carl Nielsen. Carl Nielsen's music is muscular and rhythmic and generally speaking, very optimistic. I mean, you really know how healthy a composer is when they stop being healthy. And that's what happened to Nielsen, because his Sixth Symphony, the Sinfonia Semplice, which was written in the wake of his heart ailments. That was a cat collision. Hey, girls, cool it. They're having their morning wrestling match. Usually, when the composer like that, when Nielsen, as I said, when he goes slightly off, in a grotesque kind of way, when he feels, confronted with eternity and pain and doubt, that's what happens in that Sixth Symphony. And he pulls a rabbit out of a hat at the end, of course, with his very, very funny ending by giving the whole thing a big laugh at the end. But the damage is done. And you realize how different it is from his earlier work, the Espansiva, the Inextinguishable, the Fifth Symphony, which has no nickname, which is just one of the most optimistic and powerful expressions of the life force and energy, because that's what Nielsen does. Yeah, great stuff, and an interesting lesson in the evolution of the composer's language when confronted with a crisis. After Nielsen, Rimsky-Korsakov. Oh, God, isn't he wonderful? I mean, it's nothing but beautiful tunes, gloriously orchestrated, touching and affecting, and he's like a dazzling selection of Christmas ornaments. Remember, he did Christmas Eve, which sounds like that, but just bright lights and bright colors and juicy melodies. And oh, wow. I listen to a lot of Rimsky-Korsakov, I have to be honest with you, because his music somehow orders your mind. It just sets things right. He was also a composer of tremendous logic and precision, actually. And possibly because he was self-taught in a lot of what he did, he had an extraordinary respect for the rules of musical logic. And you just wanted, like Saint-Saens, similar to that. You wanted to, and Stravinsky was his student. he just expressed that in the most lovely, lovely way. I mean, how can you not love those opera suites and other things? It's just tremendous, absolutely tremendous. You can get hooked on Rimsky-Korsakov. I've been hooked for weeks now on the dance of the tumblers from the Snow Maiden. I mean, oh my God, that's a perfect little gem of 3 minutes of musical deliciousness. Incredible. After Rimsky-Korsakov, Aaron Copland, who was of the Stravinsky school, only with a little bit more humanity and warmth, definitely. I mean, Copeland is another one of those composers who just wrote music that is, I mean, even in his American style, at openness, the freshness, the lack of sticky sentimentality, but at the same time, the use of heartwarming melody and an amazingly personal style. You always know who you're dealing with, the rhythmic power and springiness, and even in his less popular pieces. One of my favorite pieces by Copeland is the Short Symphony, which is really a study in rhythm more than anything else. Rhythm and color. Does it mean anything? I don't know. It's like an abstract painting. It's a Jackson Pollock. I don't know. It's more organized than the Jackson Pollock, I think, but it's good for your brain to listen to, and I think that's one of the things that music does. It helps keep your synapses finely tuned, and sometimes your synapses start to desynapsize, and you need to resynapsize them. And Copland's good for that. He really is. And after Copeland, Vaughan Williams. Now, Vaughan Williams, wrote music that's deeply affecting emotionally and incredibly transcendentally beautiful and whatnot. But there was a guy who was really comfortable in his own skin. You could just tell. He was an English composer doing English things Englishly. And he just loved to do that, and he did it amazingly well. He's another composer, too, whose music grew and enlarged in scope, but while remaining so completely his own and personal. And whether you like the Sinfonia Antarctica, which is fabulous film score arranged as a symphony with really creepy moments, spooky moments, or Job, which has incredibly moving and heartfelt passages, he was able to express emotion and feeling in a positive way, even negative emotion. Even in the Fourth Symphony, when he's having just a terrible rage in the final movement, there's that feeling of, gee, that felt good. When it's over, you just go, yeah, that was really good. That was a good workout. You have that the feeling of happy exhaustion when you get to the end of the Fourth Symphony, for example, and then the completely transcendental, whatever you call it, Fifth Symphony, spirituality in music, but done in a non-doctrinaire sort of way. Tremendous, absolutely tremendous. So after Vaughan Williams, Hindemith. One of the reasons I think Hindemith's sort of on the outs is because he was such a musician down to his fingertips, that his music is not considered to be expressive enough. It doesn't have the decadent angst of like the Second Viennese School. I mean, there's no decadence at all in Hindemith's music. It's all about the Bach-like realities of what music can do and what music can express. Usually happy feelings, happy sentiments, or simply the joy of creating interesting designs in sound. That doesn't get a lot of play because it really requires, I think, a level of understanding or a love of music that a lot of people simply don't have. A lot of people love music for what it gives you, not for what it is in and of itself. And again, I mean, this is not a good or bad thing. People have every right to listen to music for whatever they listen to music for. It's for whatever it does for them, and that's okay. But there's also this music is its own thing, and you can be fascinated by what it is and what it does. And Hindemith was like that. He really was, even though he wrote, again, some extremely affecting pieces and beautiful pieces and heartfelt pieces. I mean, all of his music was incredibly sincere. It really was. So, if you have turned off your Hindemith because you don't think it's, like romantic enough or whatever, expressive enough, give him another shot. Listen to it for what it is. I think you'll find it, pretty remarkable. Then Rossini. Yeah, Rossini. Oh, gosh, Rossini. Rossini was a fantastic composer for a couple of reasons. First of all, because he was working in a field opera, which was completely insane, totally insane. And he created in opera a fully rational, logical, incredibly theatrically effective system of arranging stories and expressing character and expressing emotion, from giddy, crazy, wacky, insane happiness to unbelievable pathos. And he did it all with perfect, almost supernatural, quintessential logical point and precision. And then when it all got to be too much for him and he gave up opera, he took a couple of decades, recharged his batteries, and reemerged as one of the most amusing and delicious composers for the piano and the salon in the second half of the 19th century. And that's pretty something. That's pretty cool, isn't it? There's a guy who actually overcame the challenges that faced him, the mental challenges, the insanity, the depression, and came out of it himself, just as fresh and lively and youthful as he had been decades earlier. And I just think there is no level of respect that cannot be afforded somebody who's able to do that. I mean, he's such an underrated composer because so few appreciate the effort that went into retaining his sanity. And I think that's really, really special. Then after Rossini, Grieg. I mean, how can you not like Grieg? I mean, Morning from the Peer Gynt Suite. What salad dressing commercial would be possible without Morning? And anybody who can do Morning in the Sahara Desert, make it sound like Morning in Norway or Morning anywhere in the universe, and sell a hell of a lot of salad dressing, is definitely healthy and sane. There is no question about that. The Hall of the Mountain King is also very helpful in used car ads and things like that. I mean, Grieg is a wonderful composer for television commercials, and because his music is just 100% effective. It does exactly what it says it's going to do. No BS, no, what's the word for it? Phoniness. And it's tuneful and lovely and enjoyable. And yes, Grieg is another very, very good composer when you're down. Just play the Holberg Suite. It makes everything right with the world. Believe me when I tell you that. It really does. And after Grieg, Handel. Yes, Handel. Oh, of course, Handel. The ultimate musical Epicurean. There's a guy who just loved life. And he loved music, and he loved opera of all kinds of music. And his whole life was a testament to sanity. At a time when the musical world was really not terribly sane. I mean, he was 100% honest in his business dealings with everybody. No one had a bad word to say about him as a human being, in terms of his calling as a musician. He gave respectability to the profession. He really did, in a profession that really was looked down on. I mean, the theater was looked down on as a matter of course as being, a sinkhole of iniquity and immorality and all that stuff. But he elevated everything that he touched. He really did. And unlike Bach, who was touching things that either were abstract instrumental works or sacred music, Handel elevated secular music. And boy, was that a job. I mean, to give that healthy, life-enhancing, affirming, melodic freshness and abundance. And goodness, Handel is definitely something. If you've got like COVID, listen to Handel. I mean, you may die anyway, but at least you'll die happy. Trust me, it works that way. I mean, I haven't died happy yet, but it does. Then after Handel, Dvořák. Of course, Dvořák. One of the great tunesmiths, a guy who could do absolutely anything. The Romantic period's most versatile genius, as I never cease to tell everybody. That was the title of my book on Dvořák, which I hope you'll get a copy of and have a look at. There's a guy who was determined to show that a humble person from a non-Germanic background could do everything those German people did and do it just as well. And he did. And he did it while remaining true to his origins, true to himself, while celebrating his Czech background, while writing music of the most life-enhancing quality. I mean, is there anything that's more positive and glowing and life-affirming than the Eighth Symphony? Anything? I don't think so. So Dvořák has to be on anybody's short list of the most healthy and sane composers. And he had a life that was shot with tragedy. He lost several of his children. He had, terrible things happened to him. But through it all, no matter what, his music simply glows with health and sanity and mental well-being. But last but not least, the sanest, most healthy, most refreshing, most delicious composer that ever existed. And you know who I'm going to pick. Of course, it's Haydn. Haydn, who invented Western music as we know it, who gave everything that came later its raison d'etre. Yeah, and he did it with, Haydn used to say when they accused his masses of being too happy and not liturgically correct, that he couldn't help it because thinking of God made him cheerful. I mean, there's somebody you'd want to take out to dinner. I mean, not only do you want to listen to his music, you want to hang out with the guy. I mean, you want to know what made him tick, what in all of his life and all of his work. And remember, he was a boy soprano who got kicked out of St. Stephen's Choir and was thinking of getting himself castrated so he wouldn't lose his voice. He was a singer. He was a timpanist. How can you not love a timpanist? He started life playing the drums and then learned to play the violin and the piano and compose and became the most famous composer in the world. And he did it with complete and total humility. He wrote a letter. He said, in my life I've been privileged to meet many great persons, kings and high members of the church and all these people. He said, but I prefer to spend time with people of my own class, people of my own station in life. That's what makes me happy. And yeah, all of these composers have that in common in a sense. They knew who they were. They knew who they were. They were comfortable, like I said of Vaughan Williams. They were comfortable in their own skin. They had humility in terms of, their art and themselves. But at the same time, they knew their worth. They knew music. They knew what music could do. They loved music. And that's what you hear in all of these composers, that love of music that's just oozing from every pore of their being. And so there you have it, my friends. If you're feeling down, if you're feeling low, if things aren't going well, music isn't going to change any of that, but it may make you feel a little better. It really might. There's a good possibility. It works for me, and I'm sure it'll work for you. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.